Good evening. Call this, this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission Subcommittee on Subdivision Regulations of the Town of Thompson to order. It is Monday, March 7th, 2022, 7:00 p.m. We are meeting via Zoom. I will begin with a roll call. We've got Mr. Hill.
Alvin Hill, present.
And Ms. Salsi.
Jane Salsi, present.
Mr. Santos.
Just present.
Mr. Blackmer.
Andy Blackmer, present.
Mr. Poplawski.
Dave Poplawski, present.
Oh, and Ray is coming in right now. Give him a second.
Thank you.
And you should have him here.
Good evening, Ray.
How you doing?
Well, thanks. Mr. Williams is present. Okay, move on to item 2 on the agenda, discussion of proposed revisions to the subdivision regulations.
Okay, everybody got that?
Yep.
Yep. All right. So picking up where we left off, and just a quick note before we get going, in this draft, which is a red line of the existing, it's in the order of the existing. We've already changed the order from the first go round so that street trees follows sidewalks, because that actually makes sense. But just for the purposes of following this document, it is where it is. And again, because I see we have some members of the public who haven't been in on these meetings before, we're just skipping from comment to comment in this draft because we've already been through this once. So we're going back to revisit where we still have open questions or where new comments were dropped in after a first review. So right here on letter Q, street trees, item 1, where sidewalks are required, the commission may require that street trees be planted 40 to 50 feet apart on both sides of any side of the street. On any side of the street where sidewalks are installed, subject to variations made necessary by driveways, street corners, and walks. Trees should be located within 10 feet of the edge of the pavement. Trees shall not obstruct sight lines at exits and intersections when at full growth. And I have a note here from Marla. Does this mean where no sidewalks are required, then no tree plantings can be required? I mean, my immediate thought on that is that yes, that logic obtains, that the street trees would only be planted in a situation where there are sidewalks. Open to further discussion on that if anybody thinks there is a rational or logical reason why we would require street trees planted without the presence of sidewalks.
I have some rationale for that. If you have sidewalks with street trees, your roots are going to crack your sidewalks, and without the sidewalks, it seems like it'd be better off the other way around.
You mean having the trees not on the sidewalks, but on the property line?
If you have trees by sidewalks, within a couple of years, your sidewalks are going to crack because of the roots.
There are actually, we did talk about it in the first pass. There are ways to minimize that by choosing the correct species. Some species have roots which are spreader roots, which are much more likely to heave and crack sidewalks, whereas some trees are tap rooted, and those are much less likely to cause that. And I did write up a proposed appendix for standards for street trees, which are at the end of the document. You know, and it is up to you guys if you want to discuss even having that as a requirement. I can tell you the arguments for street trees. They add property value. They add safety for pedestrians on sidewalks. they have a cooling effect in downtown areas that's less relevant in the outlying districts than it would be in like the Mill district. And so forth and so on. I mean, there's entire papers written on the value of street trees. But if you guys want to discuss whether we're requiring them at all, this would be the time to do it.
Well, I like the word may, right? So I actually think it should just read like delete where sidewalks are required. Just start it with the commission may require the street trees be planted 40 to 50 feet apart, sides of any side of the street, and then do not have where sidewalks are solved. Just say street, comma, subject to variations made necessary by driveway, street corners, and walks. This way you cover both.
I seem to remember, and if anyone remembers better than I, certainly correct me. And I don't remember what it was, but I feel like we intentionally added that where sidewalks are required. So I feel like it was intentional. I can't remember exactly why, excuse me. But I feel like we had a pretty robust discussion about it.
I think that you're right, Joe. And what I remember about this when we discussed it previously is that it came up following that, and I don't remember if it was a public hearing about something at Donovan Drive or just that Jason was coming to the commission for something. And there was a young homeowner there who was freaking out, something about the trees and on the property line as opposed to, in what would be what they call a tree lawn, right? Which is the vegetated strip that's between the road and the sidewalk. That it was going to be his responsibility because it was going to be on his property. So that's what I remember about it. And I don't, I can't say that I'm 100% sure that was the origin of it, but I feel like it was.
Well, that was my question. Who is responsible for the maintenance of these trees?
So, yeah, and that's an excellent question, Jane. So I would say, if it's a town-owned street, then the town is responsible for the maintenance. And if it's a private street, then like everything else associated with the street, it is the responsibility of the owners association.
Tira,
Yes, Alvin.
trees shall be located within 10 feet from the edge of the pavement. Now, is that street pavement or sidewalk pavement?
That is a good catch. And I don't.
And if it's road or street pavement, then have the trees set back. In other words, I would say feet from the edge of the street pavement. That means roughly 7 feet to the edge of the sidewalk itself.
Yeah, I
It may
think that,
not be on town property, on the
Yeah.
private property then.
Yeah, I don't think you can require a tree to be planted if it's going to be on the homeowner's property.
although I
Well, that's
swear
what
to you that has actually happened in Thompson. But I would agree that that's probably something that we should not be requiring.
No.
Well, I like trees on sidewalks anyway.
Well, I like trees on sidewalks also, but it should not be the onus put on the homeowner.
Yeah.
If it was 7 feet from the edge of the sidewalk, then it's not. It shouldn't be on property then, property owner.
No, it
Property
should not be on the
owners
property.
and
And what happens if
away.
the tree falls down on the homeowner's house?
Well, among the recommendations that are in that appendix on street trees are that they can only top out at a certain mature height. Like you can't be planting oaks, right? They've got to be low profile trees, which would be not
Yeah.
particularly damaging in those situations. And there are guides for street trees like that highway departments put out.
When trees, then we should have a parentheses after it, highlighting just what you said and where in the regulations to find that.
But it's an appendix E, whatever that is, on number 3.
Yes, it is referenced right there.
Yeah, these are just aesthetic trees at 25 feet, so.
Anybody else have any feelings on that before we actually move into the bulk of what this is going to be, which is sidewalks?
Here, I've done a lot of work in Worcester and they plant trees. I mean, you cut one tree and you end up buying 150 trees for the tree you cut. I know for a fact they have specific trees that won't lift the sidewalks to raise point. They plant them all around the city. So I don't think that, I just don't like the way it's a list of suggested acceptable trees. I mean, we're gonna require trees, we should have specific trees, not suggested, was my input.
So strike suggested there. Okay. Hold on a second. I can see somebody put something in the chat. Let me just type this comment in and see what's in the chat. Street pretty of Worcester. Appropriate species are mandated.
Yeah, I'd just like to see what appendix E is, and I would agree with Dave, just remove the word suggested, say these are the trees.
Okay.
I
let
don't
me
know if they're native or not for the person's comment there, but.
Yeah, well, and actually I can reply to that comment from Jessica Ross. And yes, when I wrote that appendix, the suggested species are all native to this region that are in that guideline. Okay, anybody got anything else here? All right, moving on to sidewalks. And again, we've been through on a first pass, so we're just going to where we have new comments or follow-up comments. That's a citation reference from Marla, so that I don't think we have to worry about. That's just me going back and checking that the item refers to the item it's intended to. Yeah, Jessica, I do see your comment. We're going in order in the document, and that appendix E is at the end. But what I'll suggest that if you want to send me an email, I can send you a copy of that tomorrow. But they were essentially medium, low to medium height native species like red buds, off the top of my head, maybe hawthorn, but I would have to look at it myself, smaller maples, that kind of thing. All right, so moving on.
Are you going to require sidewalks in a small subdivision? You say shall be required. If you got a subdivision that has 2 houses on each side of the road going into the subdivision, you're going to insist on sidewalks on that?
So let's actually go back and read this then, because it's been a while. And it's not, and this first letter P here is not that long a section. Sidewalks shall be required in any subdivision proposed for the Business Development District, Common Residential District, Downtown Mill Rehabilitation District, and Thompson Corridor Development District. There shall be no waivers of sidewalks for subdivisions in these districts. Sidewalks shall be required in any subdivision in the Rural Residential Agricultural District, Thompson College Common Village District, and Lake District, where streets are proposed for acceptance by the town, or for any subdivision of 6 or more lots where private roads are proposed. The conditions under which waivers of sidewalks may be permitted in these districts is detailed below in J6 waivers.
Sorry about that. I didn't go down to the next page. I just read the 2 sentences under it.
Yeah,
Number two.
no worries, Randy, because it has been a while. Number
And
3.
Kira,
Yep,
sorry.
go ahead.
And-
Who was that?
It's Joe. And I think, that's where we were looking to tie the street trees to those areas that are outlined where sidewalks are required. Again, I think we did so intentionally. I just for the life of me can't remember why.
Well, because we are suggesting there's some places where sidewalks aren't required. Again, how do you require street trees if there's no sidewalk required? Which was the question that Marla appeared to be asking. So to me, the logic flows that, yes, it only applies when sidewalks are required. Anyway, so on to number 3, the construction standards for sidewalks shall be as described in Appendix A, Section 2J of these regulations. And then waivers in the RRAD, LD, or TCVD, the commission may waive the sidewalk installation in whole or in part where the following conditions apply. The right-of-way for the subdivision is proposed as a private road or a shared driveway. The subdivision is for fewer than 6 lots. The average daily traffic of the existing intersecting streets is fewer than 100. There are no connecting sidewalks at existing intersecting streets, or unusual topographic conditions render installation impracticable. And I would see, let me add that I think that should be where any of the following, as opposed to thinking it might be all. So that's what we have just as the basics on sidewalks, where we are proposing they are required, where we are proposing they are not required, and where we might have waivers.
Can I make
So,
a comment on the sidewalk?
of course,
I've been cruising up Madison Avenue quite often lately. And there's a sidewalk over there and the people don't use it whatsoever. They're always in the road. I'm not sure if that's a place where it was required.
actually, the approval of Madison Avenue predates me, so I'm going to lean on the guys who were there, which is Joe and Randy, I think, and Alvin.
Because like I say, I've been going up there quite often and people aren't even using the sidewalk. So if that was required there, it seems like it was a waste of money on the builder's part.
I have to say, it seems strange to me that if there is a sidewalk available, that people would choose to walk in the road. Is it because the sidewalks aren't being plowed and we're in winter right
No,
now?
It was clean. It was clean on Saturday when I went up there.
Yeah, that's just weird to me, but I mean, if that's the way it is, that's the way it is.
I'd have to say that I want to say that one of the conditions of road acceptance was the curbs and sidewalks. So although I wasn't on the commission, I'd have to say that more than likely it was part of the requirements.
Yeah, and I'm just making this up too. I think there's trails and other things that are going to be engaged in up at that community as well, which would encourage people to use the sidewalk later. I don't know why I want to say that. I think I remember that being talked about at some point.
There's trails at Madison Ave or there's trails at Donovan Drive. There's definitely trails at Donovan Drive.
Yeah, it's just, no, there's other trails outside of Madison Avenue that connect to Madison Avenue.
Gotcha.
I think that was one of the reasons why it was pushed, but I wasn't there either, so I don't know for sure.
Yeah,
Just an
so
observation the last couple of weeks when I've been driving through there.
yeah, and it's a good observation, Ray. I mean, I can tell you, I can tell you that sidewalks do make neighborhoods safer. They just do. I mean, yeah, you can't force somebody to walk on one instead of in the road. I find it totally weird that if a sidewalk is available, somebody would walk in the road. I know that people do that when sidewalks don't get plowed, and that is terrible. But again, it's one of those things that adds property value, it adds safety. They can help to calm traffic speeds when they are part of, a given right of way, and the presence of the sidewalk actually narrows the travel lane.
Terry, I wanted to just add, for the Donovan Drive, you had brought it up. I believe that the homeowner had just purchased the home on off of Donovan Drive. And we were being asked for waivers for the sidewalks to come down to 131 because there was not sidewalks there. And the person, we were gonna have to do like a land taking or something for the public road. So we did actually, I believe, gave a waiver based on the input from that homeowner.
Yeah, that's a good catch, Dave. That's exactly what it was. I knew that
Yep.
there was some discussion around that at the time.
I remember that.
So as a commission, we heard the neighbor, his concerns. And I believe that was the main reason why we gave the waiver, and it just didn't make sense either. The sidewalks didn't connect to anything.
Yeah, and that's actually one of these conditions that we have here, right? There's no connecting sidewalks at existing intersecting streets. And in that case, the intersecting street is a state highway. So really nobody would be walking on it anyway, right? That's a relatively high speed
Yep.
road in the town of Thompson, high speed, high volume. I mean, just going back to when I was a commissioner as opposed to on staff, I can remember, and I don't know which subdivision it was, the commission unanimously voting to waive a sidewalk. And I kind of came back and said, it's really hard to retrofit a sidewalk after the thing is constructed. And neighborhoods are definitely safer and have higher values when they have sidewalks. So, my point at that time, and I haven't really changed my feeling on that, is that, we should be requiring the best practices up front, because it's way harder to retrofit this stuff in. I mean, once a neighborhood gets built without sidewalks, it's pretty much going to not have sidewalks forever. And that disrupts the ability to, not be car dependent, for people to be able to walk safely from one neighbor's house to another neighbor's house, for kids to be able to trick or treat. I mean, they actually call it the trick or treat test, right? If you read some planning documents, is this a neighborhood where people feel safe enough to let their kids walk on Halloween night without worrying that they're going to get, run over? And personally, I find those arguments very, very compelling. But if you guys want to change anything in this, we should talk about it now. Like, do we want these waiver conditions to be different? Do we want the standards of requirement to be different? Maybe we can go through it point by point, slower than when I read it. Because I do think this is a section that we want to get right, right off the bat. So let's go point by point, and we'll just pause for comment on each one. Sidewalks shall be required in any subdivision proposed for the Business Development District, Common Residential District, Downtown Mill Rehabilitation District, and Thompson Corridor Development District. There shall be no waivers of sidewalks for subdivisions in these districts. Discuss.
I just think that to say there shall be no waivers anywhere on those, I mean, I can't give you an example where it could be, there should be no sidewalk, but I'd like that better if that sentence wasn't there. It's okay to suggest sidewalks, but, or, there shall be no waivers is the part that bothers me.
Okay.
I totally agree with Randy. I think that's just too limiting, and somebody has something to say, we should hear it.
If we were in downtown Worcester or something, maybe that would be something that you want to make sure there's a sidewalk on every street. But we're pretty rural to have it, must have a sidewalk everywhere.
Well, it's not everywhere. It's in these districts.
Everywhere in those districts.
Yeah, which are the districts that are targeted for more development and infill.
I agree with
But
you, Randy.
I get your
Thank you.
point.
Yeah, I could-
I also agree with Randy.
Yeah, I can support that as well. And just if you can for me, just because it's consistency, Business Development District, just have the acronym after that too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Got that as well.
Yeah, let me do that
Hi.
right now.
Excuse me. Hello,
Yes, hello?
my name is Rebecca Aldrich and I'm here with Jessica Rawson. I live on Route 131, which you recently changed from mixed residential agricultural to a commercial development zone. And now you're saying you want to have a mandated sidewalks in this zone as you encourage more and more development there. And basically you're trying to change the nature of the whole town. This street was agricultural and now you've changed it to a different district completely. And now you're saying you're going to require sidewalks here for quote unquote subdivisions. So I guess your plan is that you want to just completely develop this area regardless of what the residents who live here think? Is that the drift I'm getting here?
Well, we do definitely have areas in the town that are targeted for more development
Okay,
because they
well,
have the
when-
infrastructure capacity to support that.
Seriously? You changed that designation in a secretive Zoom meeting during a pandemic that nobody even knew was changed until after the fact. And frankly, now you want to change it even further by encouraging more and more development along this quote unquote corridor, which was a mixed residential agricultural. And honestly, it's the only reason I moved here. I literally checked how it was zoned before I purchased this property, which is on Quinnebog Road. And now you want to add sidewalk requirements for any new developments that go in here. So basically what you want to do is essentially you want to regulate the town and change it into what you think it should be instead of what it is, which is a wonderful little agricultural town. And I'm frankly really opposed to adding those changes to these districts that you have targeted for development. Because not everybody who lives here shares your enthusiasm to target areas for development and fundamentally change them.
Well, I thank you for your comments. We actually don't have a citizens comment agenda item during these working group meetings, but if you would like to email me, I'm happy to sort of lay out the arguments and also take your comments. We're going to be compiling a discussion memo for the consideration of the full commission when we take this draft in, and I include every comment that I've received on every line item. So I would certainly encourage you to do that.
Yeah, I certainly will, since we did vote for this board and we would like them to properly represent the people that actually live here, not some vision they have for the future that doesn't include the concerns of the actual residents of the areas they want to change.
Okay, again, I appreciate your thoughts. There is no open citizens comment on the agenda this evening, but please do email me. My email is planner@thompsonct.org.
So are you an elected person on the board, or are you just kind of directing things?
Ma'am, so she is, sorry, this is Joseph Brody Brown. I'm the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Ms. Penn is staff to the commission. And so as she said, she will certainly integrate all comments she receives throughout
She's
this.
not even elected, and she's directing and kind of driving the ideas here, but she wasn't even elected.
She is guiding us. She is guiding us through the document, and it is the members of the commission who are giving their input and making the decisions.
Okay.
As you heard Mr. Blackmer make a comment on this very item, and heard other commissioners weighing in on that as well.
All right, Tara, did I hear you correctly? Any emails that come to you from the citizens concerning anything that we're doing with this commission on the subdivisions, we will get copies of those, correct?
Yeah, and Jane, again, since you and Ray have been on the commission just since November, when we did this with the zoning regulations, that's exactly what I did. I compiled all of the comments received and I put them into a discussion memo for the full commission. And it was pretty comprehensive. It went through wherever, after the second pass, for example, there are the open questions that we know require, just from our discussions, require more discussion from the full membership. And also any comments that received, you know, with responses where appropriate, you know, if there was an open question, why is this like this? And in order of how they would be relevant within the draft.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I want to get the input from the citizens.
Of course.
Okay, I have one comment too. I've had multiple people come up with the same concerns that this woman just pointed out. And there is going to be a lot of people that want to speak on this. Because, you know, people live in Thompson because it's Thompson, not to have it houses on top of houses.
Sure,
So-
Ray, and we have heard,
We
we have
gotta be
heard,
ready for this because it's coming.
yep, we know that there are people who have concerns and we want to hear those concerns. Just for whatever it's worth, Thompson, of course, is an agricultural community in its history. It also has an industrial history that left us with a certain amount of infrastructure and development patterns. And for the economic health of the community, we want to capitalize on that infrastructure where it exists while preserving that which is valuable to the residents who've spoken here tonight. To me, I'm a resident. You know, the things that are valuable in the open space and the conservation areas and the agricultural traditions, those things have coexisted in the past and, you know, certainly can continue to coexist in the future. And the point of all these exercises is to, you know, utilize all of our strengths to have an economically viable community moving forward. So that's where we are. Anybody else, any other commissioners want to make comments on item 1 before we move to item 2 here?
Supporting the school.
All right, let's move on to item 2. Sidewalks shall be required in any subdivision in the rural residential agricultural district, Thompson Common Village District, and Lake District where streets are proposed for acceptance by the town, or for any subdivision of 6 or more lots where private roads are proposed. The conditions under which waivers of sidewalks may be permitted in these districts is detailed below in J6 waivers. Oh, except that's J4. I don't know. Okay. Commissioners?
I'm wondering, and I don't know the answer, if, you know, as Randy and many others have shared, that, you know, one of the defining factors between points 1 and 2 is the availability of waivers. And if we, you know, if we decide to allow waivers in all districts, do these need to be 2 separate sections?
Yeah, that's a good observation. So, but that note would actually go up under here.
And maybe they do. I mean, maybe it is still, right, there are some other differences, right? So if sidewalks shall be required in a subdivision for the districts in 1, and it's not necessarily the subdivision of 6 or greater, unless we want it to be, you know, right? So if they do get combined into 1 section, there are some other differences to reconcile.
So let's go back to item 1 then, and let's hypothesize on what the conditions are in those districts: business development district, Common Residential District, Downtown Mill Rehabilitation District, and Thompson Corridor Development District, what are the circumstances where a waiver would make sense?
I'm not prepared to give you a prime example, but it just sounds too restrictive to be saying tonight, there shall be no waivers. And you don't know what's coming down the road years from now or whatever. I don't mind suggesting sidewalks, but I think that statement was too strict. That's my 2 cents worth.
Yeah,
I-
no, and Randy,
I agree with that. And my question is that you can't put in, it's required. It's got to go by situation because each one is different and we're not going to know until it arises.
well, so here's, I guess a better way for me to ask this question, because I don't think it's about the waivers. I don't disagree with everyone that such a declarative statement could come in and bite us in the future. But I guess, are we comfortable with a distinction that the default in those 4 districts listed in section 1, that the default for them, regardless of the number of lots or whether it's a private road or a town accepted road, right? The default in 1 is sidewalk. And we can allow ourselves the right for waivers, but the default would be sidewalks. And there is a distinction between the districts in 1 and 2, where there are more conditions that call for the creation of a sidewalk. That's a difference that I'm comfortable with. I just wanted to pose that to the commission. Am I being clear, or should I say it another way?
I think you're being clear, Joe. I agree with that.
Oh, certainly a lot more reason to require them in the districts in number 2 than my concern was the RR, and the common residential district.
All right, so I'm not even sure if this is the correct construction, but for the moment, sidewalks are required in any subdivision proposed for the business, blah, 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 blah.
Actually, in number 2, rural residential agricultural districts should not be required. It can be suggested, but that's where you could have I think you're more apt to have either access right off a highway that's already there with less than 6 houses in the subdivision.
I'm sorry, Randy, say it again because I was typing.
Well, rural residential agricultural district, which is pretty rural, the odds of having more than 6, well, it just seems like that's where you're more apt to have smaller, maybe I'm not picturing it right, smaller developments where you wouldn't need the sidewalks. And actually, I'm thinking Route 131, almost any road goes onto a state highway. So you have a sidewalk in a subdivision, it's not going to do any good when you get to the road, which is, I don't know, I think the odds are good that it's not going to be significant size.
I don't like the sentence, there should be no waivers of sidewalks for subdivisions in these districts. It's too restrictive.
Yeah, I think we're
Jane-
already going to strike that, Jane.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Randy, as Randy was talking about in the second section, right?
Yeah, you got the RRAD district, which I think is more rural than the others. I can see the Common Village District, the Lake District, where, well, I don't know. I think that I'll be quiet.
but
No, don't
yeah,
there's no reason to be quiet, Randy. I guess what I would say, and sometimes it's a matter of visualization, right? So the last, and speaking of one, well, not 131, but 193 there, or not 193. What is the one that goes up to Woodstock? 191? Where Donovan Drive is. 197. Thank you. You know, there's a case where the sidewalks were not waived because it serves, in this case, 18 lots, or is it 18 or is it 24? Is it 18 total or just 18 in the phase? Well, regardless, it's a number over a dozen, right? And that's a neighborhood. And so the sidewalks were not waived, even though it does connect to that state road. You know, because once you have a number of homes in that community, again, you're going back to the safety, the fact that it adds to property values, the fact that it can help to calm and slow traffic. And so it is theoretically possible, because we do have a surprising number of large parcels still in town, some of which are eligible for subdivision, that you could have a similar situation. So maybe the answer is that threshold of 6 that we arrived at is too low, right? Maybe there's a higher threshold. But what does your inner visualization tell you is the amount where now you're not talking about a couple of house lots, you're talking about a neighborhood. And you want to serve that neighborhood with safety features.
Oh, you know, just bring up another topic related to that is the conservation areas, right? So in the example of Donovan, there's a large piece of property that's been given to the town with walking trails on it. And I believe that there's even handicap ramps for the handicap to be able to access those trails. So, you know, there's a lot to consider, you know, as you take the conservation land too.
Yeah, and I was actually, even as you were saying that, Dave, I was just thinking about like creating alternatives to sidewalks in subdivisions in these districts, and that, you know, footpaths, which are pedestrian walkways, which are not aligned to the road, could be an answer there. But is that enough? Right, because what do those connect to? Again, what's your connectivity? Where are people going on those footpaths or bike paths or equestrian paths or whatever they may be?
Be devil's advocate on that. At least the sidewalk, the property owner in front of it has to clean the snow off. You're gonna have these footpaths or trails in Donovan's area. Are they gonna get plowed off or don't they count?
I don't think anybody is proposing that those trails are going to get plowed, right? Like any other trail. So the sidewalk, yes, there is a requirement.
Yeah, that goes on property that the house is sitting on, but.
Yep.
Okay. But the point being, if you put one of those trails that went somewhere, well, just as an example, if it were to go toward the, you gotta get across some other people's property, but would it go toward Quinnebog, toward the bridge? And so that was a walking trail for kids from Donovan's development to go to Quinnebog, then somebody should be plowing that path. But I guess I said enough on that too.
You don't have to cut yourself off, Randy. We got plenty of time here.
Here on number 2, subdivision of 6, why not have a division of 12? I mean, then you have a very lengthy street or private way. 6 may not be long enough requiring sidewalks.
Anybody else have any thoughts there?
Especially if it doesn't go anywhere. If it's dead end, you're not gonna have enough cars to count on one hand a day on, if there's only 6 houses on a street.
I don't think we should put any numbers on any of these because all we're doing is making house clusters.
Well, remember, last week we looked at those examples of, clustered homes.
But that's
And
not
how much-
Thompson. Yeah, that's not Thompson, though. You're trying, just like that woman said, you're ripping apart our town.
Well, what we had looked at in that case is, equal size parcels, right? And in conventional subdivisions where people are proposing larger lots, how much less of the landscape it preserves. And we've heard that.
I took a ride up on Donovan Drive the other day. It looks like there's more wetlands filled in there than you can shake a stick at. I just don't like the way this is starting to go.
I am very uncomfortable with literally telling people and where trees have to be planted and sidewalks have to be put in. I'm very uncomfortable with this. We're going too far into,
Governing the people way too much.
Okay, I mean, when you say telling people, we're not telling individual homeowners, theoretically, if it goes through like
it
this.
does go through to individual homeowners. You have to do this, you have to do that, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. I'm comfortable with it.
This is subdivisions.
These regulations are for contractors.
Yeah,
I
these
get
are-
that, Alvin. I understand that, Alvin, but ultimately it goes down to the homeowner.
Yeah, and again, just to try to advance all portions of the argument, right? And obviously, I'm very pro sidewalk. I walk to work with some frequency. When I
Okay.
get to Route 12, I have a sidewalk access. As soon as I'm off Route 12, I'm walking in the road. And I know that is not as safe as if I had a sidewalk. Now, like most roads in Thompson, I'm not seeing so much traffic that I'm feeling endangered on a daytime walk. But if a car does come, I have to step into the poison ivy on the side of the road.
And
So this is a personal example.
that's the way it goes, Tara. This is an agricultural community. We're farmland. We're average folks. And requiring all this to be done, and I know it goes to the contractors, but you are literally trying to change this town. And the beauty of this town is the way it is. I have driven these roads. I used to throw my kids in the car. We would drive through all these roads. It didn't matter if we got out and walked on the side of the road. You watch out for cars. You step in poison ivy. I don't want to see this town be changed into a situation like Webster or the outskirts of Worcester. We are not like that. And that is what I see happening.
Well, I don't think there's any danger of that for a number of reasons, but
Well, it's heading
My
that
house
way.
is on a driveway is changing it to Webster.
Yeah.
I just make just a quick point that there is existing sidewalk regulations that have been in the subdivision regs for some time. So this is really it's not anything new. I'm not saying that I don't understand what you guys are saying, but
No,
there
it's
is,
not anything new, Dave, but we're now literally getting so deep into telling people what they can do, what they can't do. And I object to that.
yeah, I can appreciate that, Jane, but I mean, there was a lot of, in the old regs, as you look at them, what's that? As you look at them, they're like, determined by the commission, shall be determined by the commission. So it's like whoever wants to determine, so you could have a developer who comes in and the determination is harsher than with someone else. So I think this brings clarity. Is it perfect? No, but there was already sidewalk. That's just my point. There was, there was.
Yes, but
some
it
pretty
wasn't
stringent-
Thank you, Mr.
It
Papa.
wasn't so in-depth, and that's what's happening right now. You're literally starting to change this town.
So, yeah, thank you, Mr. Poplawski. Thank you, Ms. Salsi. Ms. St. Ange?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got you, Amy.
Okay. I think that we're discussing subdivisions. We're discussing contractors that are coming in to build subdivisions that will bring families to our town, which is a good thing. But what's wrong with the subdivision having sidewalks? I think that's really great because kids won't have to walk in the road. We're talking about subdivisions. We're not talking about rural land that an individual. So if I buy a piece of property and I decide to build a house, I'm not going to be forced to build a sidewalk. We're talking about subdivisions, the building of subdivisions. Am I in that? Am I not getting this? Because
No,
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it completely.
You're
Because we're
exactly
talking
right,
about
Amy.
putting certain criteria, which is okay, because this is on contractors. People that come into our town, build houses, make money and leave. What is wrong with having some criteria for these contractors who are here to make money, to make our town a better, more aesthetically pleasing place, and to have a place for our children to
And to leave.
for
That's
for
all
our
they're doing.
children, excuse me, but I am speaking, to have a place for our children to ride their bikes, not necessarily in the road, and skateboard. And I don't see this as being an issue that it's being made into. But that's my opinion.
Amy, I understand what you're saying and I get the thought, but now literally, you're coming in and telling people and developers, whatever you want to call it.
You don't think there should be, I'm sorry,
I
Jane,
live
go
in a-
ahead.
I li-
I'm sorry, I didn't
I-
mean to interrupt you. You go ahead.
That's okay. I live in a horseshoe area and there's no sidewalks in here and there has never been a problem in here. It is a development. It was done back in 1964 and there's not one problem. And honestly, I wouldn't want sidewalks in here. I have lived here for 40 years. My kids and every neighborhood kid, the beauty of it was the kids could play in the street. It was a safe street. You watch out. I would not have wanted sidewalks in here. It would have wrecked this little community that I live in on Green Acres Lane and Linda Lane. The children are safe in here and it didn't take sidewalks to do it. I just really have a problem with starting to dictate exactly everything that's going to be done when a new development is going to be built. I understand regulations and I understand that there are regulations that have to be in place for certain things, but I think it's getting overstepped now. And that's my thought on it. I really never would have wanted to see sidewalks in here. And I've lived in a lot of communities throughout New England and in the South. And the best places were the ones where there were no sidewalks. It actually made it a better neighborhood. And like I said, 40 years, there were never any problems in here without sidewalks.
All right, well, what we're certainly not talking about is retrofitting existing developments, right? That's outside anything that could be required here. This
Yes,
is
I
only for that which
understand
is new.
I understand that, but you're literally changing the way this town is. And you're using the excuses that it's going to be safer and it's going to slow traffic. Sidewalks do not slow traffic down. I've been in the cities too, and they don't slow down. I've been in rural areas where there are sidewalks. It doesn't slow them down. I'm just saying that this is an agricultural community, and what you're trying to do is change that. And that's what I see. And like I stated earlier, I'm very uncomfortable with that.
No,
I
I
moved
hear
here
you,
because
Jane.
I moved here because this was a great town. And I'm not seeing that so much anymore.
I hear you, Jane, and we all live here, right? We all live here. But again, I would just repeat that yes, it is an agricultural town, but it also has an industrial heritage with areas that have been developed in the past and that have the potential for additional development to bring economic stability to the community in a way that has been lacking for quite some time.
Well, I can
I
honestly
think-
tell
I
you,
think-
Tira, for 40 years, and when I was in politics before in this town, I fought to bring business into this town. It was never allowed. And nothing was done. And all I see doing is putting restrictions on potential homeowners and telling them what they can do and what they can't do. You want to put in an industrial park and really bring in some business and give some relief to the taxpayers, I am all for that. But when you start literally dictating every little thing that has to be done when somebody is building a development and homeowners, ultimately it comes down to the homeowner. And I object to that.
Yeah.
Can I make a
yeah.
Joe,
Thank
can I
you.
make a comment? This is
Yeah, go
Cindy.
ahead, Cindy, and then I'd like to say something.
Going on what Amy said, that it's the contractor's responsibility to follow the regulations. When a homeowner's buying the house, it's a buyer beware. If you have restrictions or things that you have to do to keep up your property, the buyer should know that before they buy the house. So that's just my opinion. Okay.
Yeah, I think Dave raised a really good point that we currently have sidewalk regulations. And I think bringing clarity and consistency to those regulations is, I'll speak for myself, is my primary goal in this draft. That it's not, again, and my goal is not to be overly regulatory, but I think as written, our sidewalk regulations need revision. I think they need the clarity and consistency that this draft is looking for, and I think that's an important part to keep in mind.
Can I ask another question? Can anybody give me, and I really seriously would like to know, what instances have there been problems where no sidewalks have been put in? And I hear what you say, that there are sidewalk requirements, but what problems have arisen with just the way it is written now? That's what, I guess that's the question I'm asking. What problems have you seen arise because the regulations were not clarified, I guess, to use your word? That's my question. I mean, what problems have literally arisen from this?
Jane, I can, so the Donovan Drive, that's going to be a town road once it's accepted. And the regulations call for concrete. And in talking with Rich at the time, it's costly to maintain the concrete. So there was a waiver granted for asphalt, which made sense for the town to be able to, homeowners to salt. So in the current regs, it has to be concrete. So that's just one of the examples I'm familiar with.
Okay, I do understand that, but I mean, we are just literally micromanaging.
Sure, and some of the other consequences, Jane, I would suggest are not necessarily obvious, but are secondary. For example, if there are not enough safe places for people to walk, they will walk less and they become more car dependent. So particularly in the areas, again, where we're trying to build that economic development, the Downtown Mill Rehabilitation District and the surrounding areas that are served by public utilities and can handle more density, to also have people be able to connect safely by means of walking or cycling, keeps them out of their cars, reduces traffic congestion, and has overall better results. And, you know, again, I'm happy to go back tomorrow and send you, you know, a number of case studies on that. Which is why in the first item, we have previously suggested there shall be no waivers. Now we're hearing that maybe that's a little too stringent and we can create the conditions where waivers are appropriate. And that's fine. And in item 2, it was suggesting that, you know, they should be required in subdivisions over a certain size. The threshold we previously decided was 6. Alvin is suggesting maybe 12 is the better threshold. Again, where are you getting to where a neighborhood could have families where it is safer? And I hear you when you say, you know, the kids walk in the street, the kids play in the street. You know, where I grew up in Plymouth, you know, we had no sidewalks and we played in the street and it was a cul-de-sac or whatever. But statistically, that actually doesn't bear out. Statistically, streets without sidewalks are less safe for pedestrians. And it makes perfect sense, right? You've got a separation between the pedestrian and the vehicular traffic. If you add those street trees in, that is a potential buffer between conflicts from vehicles and pedestrians. And again, if you're talking about a brand new subdivision, right? Something where this commission does have the authority to set the standard in this document. You know, you're saying we recognize, assuming that this is the way you go, it's saying that we recognize that this is statistically safer, that it does create a higher value subdivision for folks who want to move in here. And the standard going forward is that they should be like this. It does nothing to change the existing neighborhoods because the subdivision regulations do not address retrofits. It's
Yeah, I'm
only
not-
that which is new.
I know that. I understand what you're saying and I get it. It's just that we're not on the outskirts of Worcester. We're not on the outskirts of Webster. This is Thompson. I have no objections to downtown area sidewalks, anything that's in there, especially with the mill project and everything else. But when you start branching out, I do have a problem.
So let me ask you a different question, Jane. If we were to set a threshold higher of number of houses served in a subdivision before, you know, we really should say, look, this is now a neighborhood that requires this kind of safety measure. Where do you think that threshold would be?
Minimum of 20.
I see Ms. St. Ange's hand up again.
So just to clarify, as far as safety is concerned, back in the 1960s, yeah, prior to helmets and children wearing helmets, my uncle was hit on a road without, it wasn't a heavily traveled road. It was a side road, a subdivision, so to speak, by a car when he was on his bike. He was 13 years old. And he ended up in a wheelchair for the rest of his life with severe brain damage. What is the cost for safety? Seriously? To me, sidewalks matter. Sidewalks matter for our children. And the argument that we live in a rural area doesn't fly because he lived in Killingly and this did not happen on a main highway. So that matters to me. And I think there's something to be said for sidewalks. I own a home in North Carolina. There's sidewalks. We enjoy walking our dog on the sidewalk and not in the road. So there's something to be said for this. And again, we're not talking about private citizens. We're talking about people, contractors that come here to build houses. And there is something to be said for sidewalks, even in smaller, you know, less traveled roads. So.
Like I said, I don't like the micromanagement. I understand the safety reasons. I also know somebody that was hit by a car at a very early age, and in fact, pronounced dead on the spot. And he did not die, and he survived. There are instances, there's horrible cases. We can all come up with one. I just don't like all the regulations because you're taking away, I don't know, let's just use the word choices. And that's just those are just my thoughts. And again, like I said, you know, Terry, you said you'll strike that sentence where there shall be no waivers. I think it should go by case and look at each individual case. You cannot carte blanche a whole town because each section is different. And that's where I'm coming from. Each section in this town is different, so you can't carte blanche the whole town.
Okay, so let's go down to where waivers are discussed, which is number 4. Now, currently, these are proposed just in those outlying districts, the districts not served by public infrastructure. So the rural residential agricultural district, which is probably 75 to 80% of the town, the Lake District, and the Thompson Common Village District. So this is what is suggested for conditions where waivers may be granted. And let's discuss those circumstances. Okay, so in the RRAD, LD, or TCVD, the commission may waive the sidewalk installation in whole or in part where any of the following conditions apply. A, the right-of-way for the subdivision is proposed as a private road or a shared driveway. B, the subdivision is for less than 6 lots. C, the average daily traffic of the existing intersecting streets is less than 100. D, there are no connecting sidewalks at existing intersecting streets. E, unusual topographic conditions render installation impracticable. And I just added this F based on the conversation that we were just having as a suggestion. Footpaths are incorporated into the plan with connectivity to other trails or pedestrian access. So those are suggested, and you know, you can discuss those. They can be different, they can be enhanced, they can be reduced. You know, what does the commission think of these circumstances? Because what Dave brings up about how, you know, the case-by-case basis, on some level, everything is a case-by-case basis, but there are still standards, right? And I think, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you were getting at is that it leaves a lot of subjectivity up to the commission. So the danger, and it's not a danger with this particular group of elected officials, but I think many would make the observation that sometimes in the past, it was a matter of who you know and whom you can persuade personally, as opposed to, well, the developer has demonstrated that it meets this threshold, therefore we can waive. So taking the lack of clarity out, not just for the developers, but actually for the public, right? So there's not that whiff of potential personal relationship or impropriety in there. But anyway, those are the, 6 suggested conditions under which waivers could be granted. Discuss.
And Kira, I would just add to that the liability for the commission and the town, increases with the level of subjectivity, in terms of lawsuits and things of that nature.
Could you repeat that again, please?
The more subjective the commission's decisions are seen, the more it opens the commission and the town up to legal challenges.
And that comes with the game. Not everybody. Go ahead.
Well, you can reduce the extent to which you're exposed, and part of how you do that is obviously with the language that you construct here.
So under waivers for B, have we? I thought we changed that up above. The subdivision is for less than 6 lots. Is that gonna
Yeah.
change?
Yes, we haven't established the final number, but we know this will change.
Okay.
Let's drop that note
I
in.
like 2 points here, Tira. One, I like 12 lots. And secondly, we got to stop thinking in linear dimensions. A subdivision, let's say with 15 lots, could be done on smaller lots by creating a curve, not a straight line. We got to give the opportunity to contractors to think creatively. How am I going to get 12 lots or 15 lots and I've only got 3 acres?
Right. Hold on, I'm just trying to, my tab has disappeared here. I'm trying to get to my review tab to drop that note in. It's okay, Jane. I know it's there. I'll get it in the morning.
Okay, yeah, I don't doubt that. I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure.
Yeah, for some reason it's hiding my review tab and I can't pull it up, but that's okay. Actually, I'll do this. And then I'll know. There.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Alvin, because I was looking for that. Would you repeat that just a little bit for me?
Yes, I like 12 lots versus say 20. 12 lots would give a creative contractor with, let's say, only 3 lots to instead of a straight line, which most developers will do, this would allow them to think in terms of curves, not straight lines. Then you'd have sidewalks. And it would be a very comfortable country setting, other than a straight line.
Okay. I think I've got the gist of that. Thank you, Alvin. Why did that do that? Anybody else here who hasn't weighed in?
Sarah, I do have a comment just in general on sidewalks
Yeah.
just before you go to underground utilities, you can come back to me.
No, go ahead, because we're on the topic. Let's just stick with the topic until we're ready to move on.
So the old regs reference the Town of Thompson roadway ordinance under sidewalks. I'm not familiar with the roadway ordinance as it relates to sidewalks. Is that something, I don't recall seeing it in here, but because it was in the old ones, I'm wondering if there's something in that roadway ordinance that relates.
Does anybody
Dave,
have?
yeah, let me look that up, Dave, for a minute. I got the regs right in front of me.
All right, thank you, Alvin. So we will move on a little bit and then we'll come back to this once Alvin finds that. So, but actually before we move on, I just want to call this note to your attention. Janet and I were talking the day after our last session in terms of this reference that we see a lot for average daily traffic and what that means. 100 trips per day is 9 or 10 houses, the way ADT is calculated. An average household, the figure that they use is 9 trips per day per household. You know, a trip back and forth to work for 2 adults, maybe, you know, a family goes back and forth to school to, so that's what that metric means. Janet's observation was that people may not have context for that. I do think in the road construction standards appendices, it does refer to the number of houses that generate an average traffic per day, but just to sort of call that to your attention. Okay.
Okay, right before you go up, just Marla's question, go down. She questioned handicap ramps. So are we, go down a little bit more.
Oh, I see it now. Yep.
So I just want to make sure that it is, you know, if we're referencing handicap ramps, we reference the American Disability Act and any state statutes. I know it was in the old regs. I just want to make sure that, you know, it does reference that in the appendix.
Yeah, and actually the comment that Marla makes is not regarding whether they should or shouldn't be there. It's that the citation leads to that. So that's just a check citation.
Okay.
But yes, all of those standards are included in the construction guideline appendix or appendices. But check citation is something I need to do.
Thank you.
Sure. Let me know if you found it, Alvin. Otherwise, we'll move on to R here.
Well, I'm looking at the new regs for the driveway ordinance, which was passed November of 2020. There's no, I don't see anything about sidewalks, anything.
Okay.
In a reference to it. Nope.
So somebody's coming in. Let's see. And where did you, Dave? That's not in this subsection, though. That
No,
reference.
it was in the old regs.
Okay.
The old driveway ordinance, yep.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna drop a new, this again is just a note for me. Also check.
Or roadway ordinance, Alvin. Thompson roadway ordinance it calls though.
Oh, well, that I do not have, Dave.
Okay, I'll check it tomorrow.
Yeah, just as a, it's kind of weird why they mentioned it specifically in the old regs.
Dave, what page is that on?
Jane, I'm on 28 of the old regs under T, sidewalks.
Okay, thank you.
Yep,
And that's the 2008 subdivision regulations you're talking about, Dave.
that's correct.
Yep, okay.
Yep.
Okie dokie. Okay, so I think for the moment we can move on with this unless anybody wants to go over anything else. Down to street lighting. And this is, it looks like these comments are from Marla, but these are actually carryovers from my first pass through that she copied in. Street lighting shall be provided in any subdivision where sidewalks are required. Lighting shall be downcast and located to minimize the risk of vehicular or pedestrian passage. In general, when required, the placement of lighting should be limited to intersections. So my note is just on that last sentence. It kind of stood out to me as being a little odd. Needs more discussion. It seems to me that it is more appropriate to say that lighting at intersections is the minimum, but maybe that is different in the outlying districts versus the denser neighborhoods. And again, discuss, if for whatever it's worth, I did email near the end of the day today, CTDOT to ask if they have updated standards for street lighting, because the ones in our appendices are so old, I'm quite certain that they're obsolete. But anyway, to the point at hand, the placement of lighting. Discuss. Rebecca, I see your comment, and yes, I know about that we are in a dark sky area, and there are dark sky guidelines for lighting, which I'm trying to find. They're actually surprisingly difficult to come up with, but I do know that they're out there, and I have that on my to-do list.
I got a copy of the Connecticut, let's see, dated May 19, 2021. On partial street lighting service.
And what document is that you're looking at?
This is called partial street lighting service, effective June 1st, 2021.
But what's the publication of whom?
Well, it was Connecticut Light and Power Company, but now it's Eversource.
Okay, good. That's something that would be helpful for me to look at.
Yeah, I'll bring it into the office.
Yes, thank you, Alvin.
I'm just, Tara, I'm just trying to think through. street lighting for private roads and street lighting for public roads, right? Because street lighting for public roads would become inventory of the town, and I'm assuming there's probably some sort of a selectman approval on that, because it's, you know, obviously the town's gonna stop paying for that lighting.
Yes, that is a good point.
So I'm almost thinking that, is this, you know, would this fit the bill for both private and public roads?
It's almost like, unlike everything else we've discussed, you know, trying to incentivize the private roads, this actually seems to me like it would disincentivize that.
I'd agree.
Which is an oddball thing, right?
Well, it just, you know, again, it's just my experience that you get into the you know, the bases, you know, what kind of a standard are we gonna have for, you know, if we're putting all the utilities underground, right? We just went through that section, so everything's gonna be underground.
Yeah.
There's not gonna be poles, so now you're gonna have to have a lighting base with a, you know, some sort of a fixture on a pole or a column, you know, decorative, or, you know, and then, so if that's the town's responsibility, now the town has to have inventory of, you know, it just opens up a whole ton of questions.
Well, pose your questions to your colleagues. I mean, let's talk it through. You know, what is it that we want to say here?
What number you stand on? Are you on 1 or 2, Tira?
We're still on 1, really. We haven't really
Okay.
gotten past that.
I mean, if I'll pose it to the commissioners. I mean, if we're going to require streetlights within a public road, then there's a consequence with that for maintaining those streetlights and paying for the streetlights and replacement of the streetlights. It's something we haven't done. It's something that I'm sure I don't want to do. I don't think any of the commission would want to do that, but what's the best way around it?
Well, if it's a town road, Dave, then the municipality owns the lighting.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. So the developer is going to come in, all the utilities are underground, so there's no poles to hang lights on. So they're going to do decorative bases. But some sort of stanchions, right?
Yep.
I don't know of any areas that are subject to this right now. So I'm bringing it up because it's.
Right.
I mean, there is a legitimate argument to be made against requiring street lighting, particularly, again, in those outlying districts. And that's the comment that was raised in the chat, that we are a part of the last Green Valley, the dark sky corridor, and one of the last remaining dark sky corridors on the East Coast for sure. But again, you butt up against the safety thing. So where's the balance there? And I think that's probably the reason that this last sentence was carried, because I'm pretty sure this is a carryover from the 2008 subdivision regulations. In general, when required, the placement of lighting should be limited to intersections. Maybe, again, that's the case in the outlying districts to provide basic safety where roads intersect, but to leave the rest of those districts darker. But again, looking at sort of the downtown core, that standard seems maybe low for safety reasons, but you know, that's just my impression.
Tira, to throw a monkey wrench into this whole argument, you look at number 2. I know we haven't yet, but the road exceeds 150 average daily traffic. The town of Thompson has no way of measuring ADT.
We
You
don't
just use
measure,
that rule of thumb of 10 traffic per day per house.
right, so that would imply a
25,
a street serving 25 to 30 homes.
yeah.
I think the street lighting should be only applicable to, if you can scroll up to the, whatever the 4 zones. Was it the Thompson, the BDD, the Thompson Quarter District, those 4 areas, and not the rural agricultural district, which is obviously a majority of.
Exact-
Right.
Thank you, Brian. That's my thing as well.
This way, we're keeping street lighting to a very, specific area, which I think naturally will have street lights anyway, so we'll just fall into that same sort
Right, to
of
be
aesthetic.
municipally owned.
Yeah.
So Brian, are you suggesting that you wouldn't want any requirements for new lighting in those outlying districts?
Well,
And
kind of
it's-
just going on the
it's kind
same,
of-
going on the same theory that we had before. I guess there could be a waiver of some sort. What that is, I don't know, but I'm just leaving that open. I'm not explaining that very well. I'm just saying
No,
that.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
think through how the pieces work together, right? Let me see if I can
Yeah.
scroll up enough so we can look at them together.
Yeah, and I think that was the intention, right, as we again tied this to where sidewalks are required. Right,
Yeah.
that was something we tried to consistently do throughout this draft, recognizing that a certain area of development requires something different than other areas of less development. But yeah, it may be more simple than that as proposed by Brian.
So let's just pose a logical puzzle here. In theory, a subdivision in any district could have sidewalks, whether we're absolutely requiring them in some districts and making them mandatory after a certain level, after a certain number of households in another district. Right? Let's assume that there's still some flexibility in certain districts. This is saying that street lighting shall be provided in any subdivision where sidewalks are required. You can read that to say any subdivision where sidewalks are to be constructed. Right, so saying sidewalk equals a street light. Lighting shall be downcast. That's standard practice for preserving the night sky. That's not an issue. Located to minimize the risk of vehicular or pedestrian passage. I don't think anybody would have issue with that. So then the question is still here. Is this final statement appropriate to the consistency of the logic from each of the items? In general, where required, the placement of lighting should be limited to intersections. Is that logic more applicable than limiting to intersections in those outlying districts? Does that make sense?
Say that again, Tara.
So I'm just trying, like I said, I'm trying to fit the pieces together, right? So regardless of where we fall with the number of subdivisions that are going to be required to have sidewalks, right? Some number of subdivisions will have sidewalks in the plan. So when a sidewalk is in the plan, is it de facto that lighting is also incorporated in that plan? And if that is de facto, that lighting is incorporated within that plan, in the outer districts, which is a term we're actually using for like 75% of the town, in the non-public utility served districts, is this where this highlighted sentence makes sense? That when sidewalks are required, the placement of lighting should be limited to intersections in order to preserve more of the darkness while still providing a measure of the safety. Does that make more sense?
Actually, if my memory serves me right, every intersection in town now has a street light at the intersection. I can't think of one that doesn't. But I'm not saying there isn't any.
I'd agree with you, Randy.
I agree with you, Andy.
Okay, so is that we do believe that intersections should have them and not necessarily any place else in the outlying districts?
Correct.
So therefore, this statement is okay and should be retained? Or only in the outlying districts, not in the denser districts?
I think with the in general in the front makes it palatable.
Okay. Is that consensus?
Yes, with me.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're saying outskirts, right? So 75% of the town are RAD.
Yeah, I need to find a better term than outskirts because it really is like at least 3/4 of the town, just the outlying districts.
So I'm just making sure I understand. So they might not be required to put lighting down their sidewalks, but if there's an intersection, we may require them to put a light there. With this
Yes,
ordinance.
yes, that is how I would interpret what we just discussed.
Okay, I can live with that.
Okay, moving on. Just this comment about ADT here. Street lighting may be required by the commission in subdivisions where sidewalks are not required, but where average daily traffic at intersecting roads exceeds 250 ADT. And that was something that I had proposed. I'm not married to this. I was just, again, trying to think through in safety terms. But if we are saying that it should be at all intersections, we probably don't even need this sentence, I think. Joe, read that for me and tell me what you think there.
Yeah, no, I think we can probably strike it based on what we talked about for one.
Okay. All right, moving on. I think we probably have quite a bit here that is all right. Letter U, maintenance. For roads proposed for acceptance by the town, the subdivider shall maintain all improvements and provide for snow removal on streets as required until acceptance of said improvements by the town of Thompson. For private roads and other private rights of way within the subdivision, Maintenance following construction shall be the responsibility in perpetuity of the homeowners association, which actually needs to change to owners association because there's different kinds of owners. And Marla's comment is specific to homeowners association. I actually think this is a separate topic, but we'll read the comment in. What is this and how is it legally created? What happens if a homeowners association ceases to exist or fails to provide for maintenance? If the subdivision is in a designated urbanized area and connects to the town's stormwater system subject to MS4 regulation, what happens then to ensure that MS4 requirements are met? Will the town be required to pick up the slack and perform the maintenance work? All of which are legitimate questions. My suggestion would be, and you guys tell me if you want me to do this, I think we probably need a subsection in here on homeowners associations. Part of Marla's questions, I think, can be addressed in defining what they are, but they are obviously complex legal constructs. So my inclination is to, carve that out and say, this is what they are, this is what they are not. I don't know. What do you tell me what you guys think?
How do we control them now?
Well, there are very few. In
Yeah,
fact,
so
the only one I'm aware of is the condo association. Well, no, that's not true. I take that back. There's the condo association, and then there are the two mobile home parks. Those are owners associations. The land is owned by an entity. The individual homeowners own their home and pay a common fee, a monthly fee for common maintenance.
I guess I don't know if the town is interested in obtaining owner association paperwork and approving that, right? So if someone moves into a owner association, there's probably language in there about what happens if it goes into default and the owner association has to do something about that. I don't think that has anything to do with the town, right?
The only thing that I would say the town, or in this case specifically the commission, and I think we've suggested this elsewhere, is that the existence of that homeowners association for anything, maintaining private roads or common areas in subdivisions or whatever, has to be presented at the time that the application comes up,
Sure.
So that we know the entity exists. And I think we've also suggested that that form be acceptable to town council, just so we know there's nobody out there putting a shady owners association together that could later down the line screw the homeowners.
Sure. Yeah, but that's the end of our review of that, right? So
I would suggest so. It does need a little bit more research on my part, but that is what I have sort of tentatively discovered so far. Actually, some of those links that I sent out on the snow day, I was looking back through them. One of them actually contains like a 50-page set of sample regulations, ordinances, whatever, for the creation of conservation subdivisions. And there is a section in there on homeowners associations. So I'm probably going to look at that kind of closely and then confer with town council before I create that. But you guys are still going to have to look at that, and confirm that it makes sense to you.
yeah, I guess where I'm going with that in end here is I think that document would probably have the answers to the questions of Marla there on what happens with stormwater and MS4 and all those.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. But aside from not having the owners association paperwork in this EU maintenance, I'm okay the way it's written.
Okay, anybody else on that?
I'd agree. I think it's,
Yes.
I think it's good. I was just, a thought popped into my mind where weren't they even out, I'm on the, for roads proposed for acceptance by the town, the subdivider shall maintain all improvements and provide for snow removal on streets as required until acceptance of said improvements by the town of Thompson.
Where are you?
Under U, under maintenance.
Okay. Roads proposed by shall maintain all improvements. Wait, I think that's a straight carryover from what we have now.
Yeah, it is. I'm just going back to, I don't know if it was Rich. Was it, or was it they held the bond for six months afterwards, after it was accepted, or wasn't it, even though it was accepted, they had some legality, they were tied to it still.
Isn't that the performance bond?
Yeah, I think it has to go through one winter, or something like
Okay,
that.
yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, and we do describe the bonding process later on, you know, in its own section.
Yes, yeah, no, I'm good. I just,
Okay. All right, so it go ahead, whoever was starting.
That's okay. I was just gonna say, Dave, yeah, that was a very particular situation with that. What your example there was going through a winter, plus he was still cutting in driveways. Right, to that,
Yeah.
and we had to prove certain things, so that's why there was such a long period of extension for that 6 months for that bond. There was other particular items.
yeah, okay.
All right, so that actually brings us to the end of section 2, and rather than getting to section 3, I think we'll hold that till next week so we can, you know, go concept by concept. Anything in section 2 that anybody wants to go back to? Either what we talked about tonight, sidewalks, lighting, or any of the previous topics. Pipe up?
I just want to make a general comment about shared driveways one more time.
Let me go up to the section.
I'm so sorry. I don't want to end your night at 8:45 on shared driveways.
No, it's okay. I mean, that's why we're here, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm here.
I
There
just
we go.
want to throw my comment about 5 or I think it was fewer or less. I can't remember which word you used.
Shared driveways may serve up to 5 detached dwelling units in a residential subdivision.
Yeah,
Is the first provision.
yeah, knowing again with the stacking, and I know some will probably disagree with me. I want to say up to 2 or less with that, going with that example that was provided at the last meeting showing the house to the left and to the right. I'm not a fan of these shared driveways, and now knowing that the street size, I shouldn't say street size, driveway size would go from 8 feet to 16 feet. You know, for ambulances and stuff like that, I'm suggesting 2 or less.
Well, if it's 2 or less is 1 and therefore not a shared driveway. So can I get you to go to 3 or less?
3, we'll do 3.
Okay.
That's about it for me.
I have something to say on that. We had shared driveways in our regulations years ago and it got shot down because of how many people ended up getting into arguments and the police were called. So we're going backwards in time, even just doing shared driveways.
Yeah.
I'm with Brian, 3 or less.
Can I make a comment? And I don't have the regulations in front of me, but do the zoning regulations say 5?
It does right now, Cindy. Yes, that is correct. We had talked about
Not
this.
the old ones.
What?
Yeah.
So you'd have to change that.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Theoretically, you would. although the conditions for subdivision shared drives are slightly different from the ones described in the zoning regulations. So I've got that there. And again, I'll just reiterate that the arguments for them are that they are more environmental, right? They create less pavement. They create fewer points of stormwater runoff. You know, that there are actual solid reasons for them, which in a community that has stated it wants to preserve its green space, I think are significant. But I hear you, B, and I have your note here. And in the end, you guys are going to have to debate it, right? And
Yep.
and one side is going to win that argument,
Yep.
whoever
That's
that
totally fine.
happens to be.
Appreciate you hearing me out on that. And yes, Cindy, we'd have to change in the zoning regulations as well. And I remember bringing this up when we were doing that as well. So anyway, thank you.
And I think Jane said she concurred on
I
that.
agree with you, Brian.
Yeah, I do concur.
I agree with him also.
I mean, even flag lot with shared driveway, there'll be arguments. Who's going to clean what? Ah,
Okay, I've got that. Anybody else want to touch anything here in the last 15 minutes or so?
Tara, could we just go to, I have the email, the wording for the snow? You proposed some wording for the snow on, not the ordinance, that was, that, I agree with Alvin to that point, there needs to be an ordinance, but you had wrote something up, I think you shared it was it today?
It probably went out in the draft that I sent, the rolling draft, which means it should be
Oh.
in here. So I just have to find it.
All shared driveways over 500 feet long shall include one or more areas alongside the travel portion which are suitable for snow storage and located in such a way as to prevent excess snow from being plowed into the connecting road.
Yeah, where is that? Oh, because I want to look at it too, now that you've brought it
But
up.
while you're looking that up, again, I'm going to say this again. I'm assuming that what we're talking about is on a plan is just an identified designated area where snow will be pushed. And that could be a grassy space, right? That's all it is. It's not like some custom paved area. It's just a
no, it wouldn't be
identification
paid.
of a designated area.
Designated area. Thank you,
Yep.
Brian.
Okay, very good, Alvin. Thank you.
Dave, I have no idea where I put it in this document, but I obviously put it in here because I know I carried it. Oh, no, there it is. It's in the sidebar note. So in the clean draft, which is the one that I work simultaneously with this messy draft, it'd be incorporated. But there it is. New note, proposed driveways over 500 feet long shall include one or more adjacent areas suitable for snow storage, which I thought was just a simplified way of getting to what you were at. To what you were after.
Yep. Yeah, I just wanted to, I know it came out in an email, so I just wanted to make sure that we could discuss it since it was so fresh in everybody's mind from last week. I don't see a problem with it. I agree with Brian and Alvin. It doesn't have to be asphalt with retaining wall or anything else. I mean, it just has to show what the plan is.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that's what Brian just said. And
Yeah, just add
shall
my
be sewn up.
comment. Yeah, just in my comment there, I can't really see it, but up to the right, just say it's designated areas identified on a plan.
Yeah.
That could be a grassy area. So it's clear.
Could be a gravel area too, Brian.
Yeah, it could be gravel or grass, right? Exactly.
Yep.
So do you want me to
Could be up to-
include, it could be gravel or grass, or do you just want to leave
I
it with
think you
suitable
should.
for snow storage?
I think you should use the word gravel or grass so people don't understand, people understand that it's not some special paved area. It could be anything. It's just an
It's just considered a
identified
runout. We could put that in definitions, runout for snow.
Okay. All right, so I've got that in there. And I'll peel that into that clean draft again. Anybody,
Thank you.
anything else on the stuff in section 2? So just what we've been through in the last 2-3 weeks? That they
Yeah.
wanted to go back to? Anything bothering anybody?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion has been made to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Motion is made by Mr. Hill, seconded by Mr. Santos to adjourn. This meeting is adjourned at 8:50 p.m. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you for the citizens that are here this evening. Thanks everyone for your great work on this and our continued progress.
Gloria, can you remind us when our what night next week is our meeting?
Well, on my calendar, I had March 9th, which is this coming Wednesday. Did that meeting get changed to tonight?
Yeah, we do not have a Wednesday night meeting
Okay,
this week. So what's after that on your calendar?
I do not have anything after that.
Anybody have that schedule we sent out?
I'll just do another doodle poll because we all love those.
No, we don't need a doodle poll. The date is set. I just don't have it in front of me. Oh, wait, yes, I do. Hold on. Thursday, the 17th,
Thursday.
7 to 9 p.m. Same bat time, same bat channel. Thursday, the 17th.
Okay.
Okay,
Very good.
thanks, everybody.
Thanks everyone. Have a
Yep,
good night.
Good night.
Night.